Welcome back. Welcome back to the morning show here on Tobago Updates Television. I am Adanna Combie. Thank you so much for staying with us. Before we get into our next conversation, of course, we have the photo of the day. The photo of the day for you today, and we do hope that you can figure out where this photo is taken from. Before we wrap the conversation this morning, we will reveal to you where this photo was taken. But in the meantime, do you think you can guess? This photo is courtesy Terrence Onro. He sent in this photo, and we do hope that you are able to guess it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to head on into our next interview this morning, and we switch gears a little bit. We're going to be speaking with Minority Leader and Assemblyman Kelvon Morris this morning as we talk about the National Carnival, the Tobago edition of the National Carnival of Trinidad and Tobago. Good morning, Mr. Morris, and welcome.
Good morning, Ms. Combie, and let me say a special good morning to all of Tobago, Trinidad, and Tobago.
Of course, a pleasure having you on this morning. Before we get into the conversation, how was your carnival season this year?
I had a quite enjoyable carnival. I was able to enjoy the national festival both in Trinidad and Tobago, and it was really a great experience for me and my family.
Right. Well, I'm happy to hear that. And we're going to head on into the conversation. As you are aware, we are in the age where information is at your fingertips, and especially with the advent of social media, where people can, express their views, their opinions, whether they are for or against. And we hear a lot of conversations about the National Carnival and the Tobago leg of the carnival. Some people are saying that it is dying. Some people are still enjoying it, and some people have recommendations and suggestions that can make the event itself more lucrative and more beneficial to the persons who want to stay in Tobago to enjoy. Over the years, we have seen where a lot of people from Tobago head across to Trinidad for the National Carnival, and in my opinion, if I'm not mistaken, that is the reason why the October Carnival came on stream to kind of to bridge that gap between what is happening nationally and the Tobago-centric carnival. And I know you have your opinion where that is concerned as well. And we want to talk a little bit about your position where the Tobago aspect of the national carnival is concerned. So let's get into that this morning.
Well, my position is also reflected in the PNM's policy position. And the PNM's policy position has always been based on our stakeholders' engagement that the two carnivals can, in fact, coexist and both can also complement each other. Of course, the Tobago's participation in the National Carnival does mean that it requires us to do some introspection as to what works, what does not work, and therefore build a product around the things that Tobagonians enjoy and can leverage during the National Carnival. And therefore, we also have our October Carnival, which is our own unique Tobago-centric festivities that also allows us, in a real sense, two bites at the cherry. What we have seen, and to my disappointment, especially this year, is that there have been a clear watering down of Tobago's participation in the national event. And it has been watered down to the point that it seemed and appeared haphazard, incoherent, and there seemed to be a lack of proper planning. And that would have caused some chaos, some confusion in the space. For example, I think it was on Carnival Monday, there was talks of whether Carnival is on in Roxborough. Roxborough is known for for their Monday Carnival for senior bands and night mass, and they were seeing information to and fro whether it was on, off, on again, and so forth. So there seemed to be a lack of planning. As a matter of fact, to my dismay, I have not seen anywhere where this national carnival was launched in Tobago. I was able to view in places like Arima, San Fernando, etc. They launched Carnival even as part of the national carnival. And traditionally in Tobago, we will also have a launch that signals to all of Tobago and to the world that Tobago is participating in the national event, and that didn't happen this year. So that also created some confusion as well.
All right, Mr. Morris, I know you're able to highlight the things that didn't go well in terms of, what we could have done and what we should have done and what we did not do, which of course resulted in what you think as a missed opportunity. In fact, if I could go to your social media post, it says that the notion of destroying one carnival to build another is incredibly short-sighted. In terms of destroying one carnival, is it that you actually see the national carnival being destroyed in order to carry out the objectives of the October carnival? Is it that you're literally seeing that all the resources are being pulled in October and none at all in the national leg of the carnival? Is it fair to make that assessment?
So the reason that post came from robust discussions in the space, and there are some people, and I'm not just saying it is a position of only the current TPP administration, but there are some persons both in Tobago and Trinidad who believes that Tobago should have absolutely no business participating in the national event. And my position is that as long as we remain a union, the United Trinidad and Tobago, the national event should be celebrated nationally, including Tobago. And therefore, if we are celebrating the national event, we as Tobagonians got to recognize and got to liaise with stakeholders and have an appreciation as to the events that can, in fact, be properly marketed and have the kind of participation that will make all of us proud. When you have an event where you're seeing perhaps or 10 and 12 persons in a band and you're hardly seeing any spectators, it makes you wonder whether the proper consultation and proper planning was put into it. And then, as you rightfully said, there are aspects of the carnival that are properly planned and participated. For example, the interdepartment is one such event. Of course, we have the stakeholders at Calder Hall who always throw their juve on a carnival Tuesday morning, and that is well attended. The stakeholders in Roxborough, they always put on an excellent night mass, and in fact, Roxborough at one point had one of the biggest juve festivities. People from Tobago West used to leave the West and go up to Roxborough. As a matter of fact, I know Trinidadians who actually left Trinidad to come to Tobago to play juve because of what is offered. And therefore, we know the mud mass by itself is a seller. That is something that has its own natural patrons who look forward to that, and people participated in droves. So therefore, it tells us there is still an appetite for activities to happen in Tobago. What we need, and as I said in that post, what it needs is the right leadership to ensure that we can structure the events in such a way that people are aware from very early what is happening and we can market it. Because truth be told, there are persons in Trinidad who prefer to be in Tobago for Carnival, and not just for the relaxation, but also to participate in what Tobago has to offer. And there are people even outside who actually look forward to coming to Tobago and have that unique experience, because the traditional side of the carnival is what Tobago should really be marketing to the world and to the country during February. And of course, in October, that is where we have the commercialized version, because as you recognize, in October, there's no room for the students. And of course, we don't want to disrupt school during that period. So the Kiddies Carnival is also a big aspect of the Tobago Carnival during February. You also have the issue of competitiveness. For us to continue to really preserve the culture and preserve the art form of mass making, we have to incentivize those persons who are involved in creating mass in such a way that they can, in fact, see some remuneration through competition. And we know in October, that is not facilitated, because what you have is a more commercialized pretty mass where people simply pay for their costumes and there is no competition. So therefore, this is why the PNM's position is clear that the two can exist, the two should exist, and what we require is proper leadership.
All right, and talking about proper leadership, leading me into my next line of questioning. When we're talking about utilizing the resources in a way that can be maximized, that we can all benefit, both carnivals living and thriving here on the island of Tobago, do you believe that the resources, especially for the national carnival, the resources coming from the central government, because remember, this is now national, this is not just Tobago. Whereas the THA is responsible and Festivals Commission, they are responsible for ensuring that the funding is available for the October Carnival. Do you believe that the central government has appointed the resources, the necessary resources in such a way that will afford Tobago to have the type of carnival in the national aspect of it?
Well, I saw a number of persons having a lot to say about me personally participating in the national Carnival Monday and Tuesday events. And one of the reasons I took my personal funds and my personal time to go to Trinidad to experience mass in the way I experienced it was so that I can get a first-hand view of how things are done. And one of the things I recognize, whereas NCC is responsible for the overall management and funding of the carnival activities, what I also saw and experienced was the private sector involvement in the whole operations and funding of mass bands and their operations in Trinidad. I also want to make it clear that in terms of funding, you have to appreciate that when the THA makes their submission to Parliament, they make the submission with the inclusion of both festivals. Well, that should be what is expected, and therefore they would have an allocation for festivals, and under festivals you would have the carnivals, the two carnivals. So therefore, I don't think it is accurate to imply that central government is not providing the THA with the funding. It is how THA utilizes the resources that is of paramount importance. And it's about how you prioritize, how you are able to also partner. And therefore, the carnivals, what it requires is the THA to have a clear plan, clear budgets, and then also how you partner with the various stakeholders, including the private sector. You have people such as B Mobile and Angostura and NLCB and Caribbean Airlines, etc. If you are able to, again, it's about leadership. If you are able to have the conversations very early, have the various partnerships and collaboration, then you would recognize that you will be able to fund your activities. Because, for instance, I have mass band leaders complaining to me that they receive for a section or to carry out one part or aspect of their participation only $900. And I'm thinking to myself, what could $900 do in terms of creating mass? That is, in terms of you buying all the material to produce mass. I had to personally give to a mass band person who wanted to register to compete. I had to support them by donating funds to allow them to pay. And so sometimes, when you see people saying that because you're not present, you're not supporting, I find it, it's laughable. I also, because you see, people need to be balanced and people need to be fair as well. I noticed that there was a clear absence of the Secretary of Tourism from the carnival activities. I was at interdepartment and I did not see her present. I also noticed she was not at the medium band finals. I also noticed that she was also absent on Monday and Tuesday. And the question we have to ask ourselves is, in the height of Tobago being part of the National Carnival, where was the Secretary of Tourism during all of these activities?
I am unable to answer that question for you, but I can tell you that we have to go for a short break before we continue this conversation, this very important conversation as it relates to things happening right here in our Tobago space. And it affects me, it affects you, it affects all of us. So viewers, we do have to go for a short break, but when we come back, we continue conversations with Assemblyman Kelvon Morris as it relates to Carnival, the National Carnival held here in Tobago. In the meantime, please help us to share the live, share the live, share the live. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Morning Show. Why is my tongue tied this morning? Welcome back to the Morning Show here on Tobago Updates Television. Before we continue conversations, we are going to tell you where the photo of the day was taken from. Courtesy Terrence on Raw. This photo was taken at Speyside, a beach in Speyside there. Yes, I hope you guessed it. And guess what? We also have another photo for you, Tobago, back in the day. This one you have to guess before we wrap the show today. Back in the day in Tobago, can you figure out where this photo was taken? While you're guessing that, we're going to continue conversations this morning as we continue speaking with Assemblyman Kelvon Morris, Minority Leader. We continue our conversations about Carnival, the National Carnival of Trinidad and Tobago, the Tobago involvement in the Carnival. Mr. Morris, we were talking before, and of course you identified some of the weaknesses in the Tobago presentation of the National Carnival. You also highlighted some of the elements that you think can work to make this happen. How do you marry the resources that are available, whether it comes from NCC, Central Government, THA, Festivals Commission? How do you employ those resources that are available, whether it be financial resources, human resource, to ensure that you present something that is beneficial to all those who are in the space, and also not just who are in the space, but also to make it attractive, because at the end of the day, the presentation must yield some type of reward, some type of benefit. We don't want to stage a show where, as you mentioned before, that they are few in numbers, but how do we attract our own Tobago persons in this space, and also persons from the outside who are looking for something that is unique and diverse here in the Tobago space? So let's say, for instance, you are given the responsibility as Secretary of Tourism, or you are given the responsibility as whomever the power lies with to ensure that we have that product here in Tobago. How are you going to utilize the resources, whether they are limited or whether they are in abundance, to ensure that the Carnival, the National Carnival in Tobago, is well attended and the buy-in is there?
Well, first of all, we have to have a clear position. And the position, as I said, for the PNM is clear that both carnivals can, in fact, coexist and complement. Once that is the policy, then you have a strategy. The strategy is one which has to be fleshed out between stakeholders, and the stakeholders also have to be clear as to what they will be offering. The three main stakeholders of Carnival in terms of execution are the Pan-Trinbago, Tuku, and whoever is the mass band people, because those are the three elements of Carnival that really plays out itself. And once they are clear as to what they want to put on and the budget as to what would allow a successful showing of that, then you go into your implementation phase. And it's in the implementation phase you identify your human resource needs, and then you are able to also understand your stakeholder, your target audience. Who are the people we are trying to attract? If for example, Kiddies Carnival, if you're dealing with kiddies, you're dealing with parents, teachers, and schools, and therefore once you are able to integrate the involvement of schools, and as I said in one of my posts, what I remember and recall why Kiddies Carnival was so successful, it was interrelationship and marrying of both the community and the school. So both the community and the school work together to produce mass, and therefore, because you had that involvement, people were invested in the whole product, and so persons came out. So you would have had the students participating in large numbers, and they have the community coming out and support, because it is your daughter, it is your son, it is your cousin, etc. And therefore, what this requires is for us to be able to involve all stakeholders, have the conversations, have the collaboration, and I think we will be able again to have the kind of carnival that we all can be proud of, and the kind of offerings that would make sense for the investment, because as you rightfully say, ultimately Carnival is a business and is about dollars and cents. What I recognize in Trinidad, because Trinidad is a mecca, and you will recall we spent over $500,000 to send people to Grenada to go and learn how to do Carnival. When Trinidad is right there, just a plane ticket away. All I did was required and requested of the THA plane tickets, and I funded my entire trip, accommodation, transport, etc. And I was able to get a full view how Carnival impacts from the very top, that is your businesses like Angostura, etc., to the very lower end, that is the man on the street selling his water, selling coconut water, the vendor selling food. I was able to see how many young persons were involved as marshals. The Carnival employs hundreds and hundreds of young people during that period. So it is one of those ways that you can clearly have that trickle down effect very quickly, very impactful if done properly.
Mr. Morris, I'm going to ask this question, right? Is this the first year that you have noticed the National Carnival in Tobago declining or having this measure of impact? And I'm asking this question primarily because have you had the opportunity?
I will be very honest. I've been one, if you look at my track record, even when the PNM was there, who advocated one for us to have a review of how Carnival is administered in Tobago, because we know for the Tobagonians who can afford it, many go to Trinidad to experience what the Mecca, what the larger island is producing during the last final week of Carnival. And therefore, there has always been a challenge in terms of production. But Tobago, nevertheless, used to have really quality mass production. I remember the Changs, Miss Candice Chang, Mom and Day, having excellent production. The Melvilles from Roxborough, even I remember Bunjin having excellent production. So Tobago have had quality mass production for quite some time. What you used to have perhaps sometimes is whether we are having the kind of participation, people involvement. And that is why I believe at the time, with having Tobago having an alternative carnival, that would have allowed us to have the influx of Trinidadians coming in to help to bolster the numbers. And so it is not to say that Carnival before was perfect, but it is also to remind Tobagonians that we also had, this is not a new phenomenon to Tobago. We had both in the National Carnival and there was something called Tobago Fest. And that went on for some time successfully until Tobago Fest phased out itself, and we now have what we have in the form of the October Carnival. So Tobago having two carnival-like festivities is not unusual to the island, and therefore persons trying to say that we need to shut one down to have the other, I find is quite short-sighted.
All right, Mr. Morris, we appreciate your views this morning. And my final question to you is, having made that assessment over the years, being involved in even from the PNM aspect of it and now with the new administration, having seen the trajectory and the way the carnival is being presented in Tobago and having made your assessment, have you been able to have conversations with stakeholders in terms of what they think the missing link is and how we can bring back the carnival to what it used to be? Or is it that we should focus on something else to make it more appealing to our local persons here on the island, or to bring in persons as well to participate in the event?
The PNM's position is clear and my position is clear, and that is why we've been having ongoing consultation with stakeholders, and that is why we can say with a level of confidence that both carnivals can and in fact will coexist and complement one another. We will bring the leadership, the mass people, the Calibans, and the fraternity. They will bring their creativity, and we will, when the PNM return, have two magnificent festivals that all of Tobago will benefit from and be proud.
All right, Mr. Morris, thank you so much for joining us this morning and for bringing your views and, of course, talking about our Tobago Carnival, the National Carnival, rather, and how Tobago participates in that carnival. We heard your opinions and your suggestions, recommendations, of course, for moving forward. Before we end the show this morning, of course, we have to let you know where the photo back in the day was taken. The photo back in the day, have you guessed it? I am thinking, and I am sure I am right, this is Pigeon Point. Yes, that is a Pigeon Point jetty there. Our photo of back in the day photo for today, Thursday, 6th March 2025. Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you so much for staying with us even to the end of the morning show here on Tobago Updates Television. But this is not where we end our programming. We head on over to GMT, which is Good Morning Tobago, and we do hope that you can stay with us. As you do, please help us to share the live. Share the live. Share the live.